Going to say, you know, we started speculating about this on Studio B, the afternoon program that I host here on Fox News Channel, as you well know, John Avlon, over the last couple of weeks. And we were saying kind of jokingly, and I might have actually been leading this charge, how much fun it would be to have Joe Biden, because sometimes we look at things as what's going to make the best TV. And Joe Biden, it makes damn good TV. Anybody who ever saw him with the late Tim Russert or any of those on the morning show, on the Sunday morning show, see him go at it with Republican colleagues, you know this is a man who will jump up and say just about anything, and he says it, well, entertainingly. John? Okay, I guess John Avlon is gone now. I'll bring in Bob Beckel now. Bob Beckel is a Fox News contributor, Democratic strategist, long time in this political game. Joe Biden, how do you feel?
You know, I still think Hillary Clinton would have been a better choice, but if anybody was the second choice for me, it was Joe Biden. And I think you're exactly right. Listen, and you have been saying this for weeks. I've been listening to you. This is going to be the most entertaining vice president we're going to have in a long time. You know, he's not afraid to pull his punches. There's something that hasn't been said so far that I think needs to be said. He doesn't like John McCain. They've been in the Senate together a long time, but they've had some serious disagreements. I remember when Biden, if you remember,
he likes John McCain about as much as a conservative Republican would have said he or she did not long ago.
Yeah, that's right, or maybe worse. You know, I remember when Biden came up with the idea about Iraq. You remember this about a year and a half ago. He called for the partitioning of Iraq between Sunnis and Shiites and Kurds. And McCain dumped all over the idea without even talking to Biden about it. But Biden didn't take to that too easily. Now, the other thing I think impressed Obama, and I think certainly impressed me, and I've known Joe Biden since he ran for president in 1988 before he had to get out of the race, is that the guy actually learned how to control himself during debates. Remember, there were a couple of shocking moments during those debates when he actually answered a question in one word, either yes or no, which for those of us who are Biden followers was mind-boggling. But I think the point that John was making is right, and that is that Joe Biden is easily a more experienced foreign policy guy than John McCain is. He's been to far more parts of the world. He understands Europe a lot better than McCain does, understands Asia a lot better than McCain does, certainly Africa. And I don't think there's not one quarter he has to give to McCain in a debate on foreign policy. The fact is that we've still got Obama's got to carry the biggest part of the fight here.
No question, but he can be the good cop to Joe Biden's bad cop, can't he? It can be Joe Biden who goes on the attack. The American people are used to seeing Joe Biden on the attack. Anything else would be a little weird.
I think if Joe Biden were nice every day, I would get worried about him. Joe Biden's not afraid to get in people's faces, as you well know. I mean, he's done that with presidents and prime ministers around the world. He's been very tough, and in fact, he got right in the middle of this Georgia thing and has been warning about Putin for a long time. Well before when George Bush looked into Putin's eyes and found a soulmate, Joe Biden said, "Be careful." I think, look, Joe Biden would have been on the top of the list as a candidate for Secretary of State. So, now that you've got a guy who can get out there, and not only that, Joe Biden's not afraid to take on the right. And when you start talking about tough politics, Joe Biden knows a bit about that. I mean, he's as close to a political consultant as a candidate that I've ever run across, and I've worked with him before.
Take me behind the scenes in Chappaqua, New York and beyond. Hillary Clinton was at the State Fair upstate in New York today. This is a candidate who was never even vetted. It was Barack Obama who said, and here's the quote, she would be on anybody's short list. But to be on a short list, I think you have to be talked about. And my understanding of things is, from sources, that the two of them never even discussed the idea of such a thing, much less having begun the vetting process. Is it possible, Bob Beckel, that the Clintons at the Democratic convention could cause more of a storm maybe than some are anticipating?
Well, it could be, and I think that's really what the storyline is out here. I mean, as soon as I landed in Denver, that's what I began to hear about, because it was clear that she was not going to get the nod. Now, in terms of vetting her, I mean, frankly, how many times does somebody need to be vetted? But still, you still have the Clinton library and all that stuff. We knew she wasn't going to be vice president. The question then is, what was going to take the steam out of the Clinton forces here. And they decided, the Obama campaign, I think rightfully so, to give them a roll call vote, or at least a partial roll call vote. I talked to some of the Clinton delegates today. There's some of them are still not at all satisfied, and they think at a minimum he should have talked to her about the vice presidency. He didn't do that. Now, I will say this. I think she had decided with her husband, Bill, it wasn't going to happen, and she tried to let her supporters down easily over the last few weeks. That's not as easily said than done, you know. You know that comment she made in that fundraiser about, you know, sometimes you've got to let these things play out. Well, she was hearing from a lot of her delegates who've been out there for 2 years, working 18 hours a day for her, saying, you expect us to go to Denver and do nothing? And I think, you know, look at the history of campaigns when you don't have an incumbent president. If you go back to Teddy Kennedy in 1960 with only 600 delegates, Gary Hart in '84 with only 400 and some odd delegates in our convention. When you have people who've got a minority of delegates, it doesn't take many delegates to cause a little bit of trouble. And in this case, you've got almost 50%. And that's an all-time record, a historical record for the last 100 years. You've never had anybody that close to second place. So, you know, the question is, what do you do with these delegates? And the question, I think they'll be happy with Joe Biden. I think they like Joe Biden. I know Hillary Clinton does.
He's a fighter, and they appreciate that. And I want to get to Major Garrett with some news in just a moment. But before we do, how impressed are you, Bob Beckel, that they've been able, the Barack Obama campaign has been able to effectively manipulate the news cycles for days on end, have been able to gather millions of cell phone numbers for text messages, and now will be able to use those cell phone numbers as a sort of side-by-side army. Later on, can't you see close to Election Day a text message? Have you voted? Have you taken a friend to vote? That's a powerful database.
Well, you know, I would say for anybody else, Shep, that might be a cynical response, but it is exactly right. I mean, and not only that, listen to this. Think how close they've kept this thing now. You're talking about having a rally tomorrow. Can you imagine how late printers are going to have to be up tonight making Biden and Obama signs? I mean, it's amazing this thing is not leaked out. I had 2 different jets in 2 different airports trying to sneak a vice presidential candidate in '84 so nobody would know about it, and we couldn't even get the first jet fueled before it leaked. I think that you needed an adult, which is why, by the way, not to say that Biden's not an adult, but Joe Biden is sort of the epitome of a guy that looks like he could step into the presidency tomorrow. I think it also probably puts more pressure on the Mitt Romney side from John McCain. I think that Mitt Romney is a better fit with Joe Biden than anybody else. Certainly Pawlenty or Porter, the congressman from Ohio, who Joe Biden in a debate would run over either one of them.
Tim Pawlenty, the governor from the state of Minnesota.